Chloe has kindly agreed to light the chalice. Would you do that, Chloe? The chalice lighting that I use is one that I often use. I hope you're not tired of it. It's 447 in the back of the book. Don't look it up, it's short. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to thank with deep gratitude those who have lighted the flame within us. It's written by Albert Schweitzer, and I have some comments on Albert Schweitzer before I go on. Do you have any Star Trek fans here? I forget which episode of the many groups of Star Trek this was in. I sort of think it's when the physician, and Schweitzer was a physician as well as being a musician, a teacher, and everything, a winemaker. And there was a picture of Albert Schweitzer in one of the doctor's offices on Star Trek. And I sort of think it was the physician who was kind of electronic. He could only be there for a while in the physician's office, and then they changed the idea later so that he could go out. But he had the picture. Hologram, thank you. Great. And so he was kind of stuck in this place. And I appreciated the picture of Albert Schweitzer that was on the wall there. It reminded us, especially as we're a couple generations away from Schweitzer right now, that he was a very important person and a very caring person. His motto, reverence for life, is rather well known. And I found this in a biography, but it's a quotation from Schweitzer, who said, "It should not be overlooked that as a child, Schweitzer felt deeply for the suffering of everyone and animals, not just people, animals." The direct quote is from Schweitzer: "As far back as I can remember, I was saddened by the amount of misery I saw in the world around me. Youth's unqualified joie de vivre I never really knew. One thing especially saddened me was the unfortunate animals who had to suffer so much pain and misery. It was quite incomprehensible to me. This was before I began going to school. Why in my evening prayers should I pray for human beings only? So when my mother had prayed with me and kissed me goodnight, I used to add silently a prayer that I composed myself for all living creatures. And it ran thusly: O Heavenly Father, protect and bless all things that have breath. Guard them from evil and let them sleep in peace." For all the animal lovers in the group. Yeah, and those were the opening words. I have a little background on the hymn that we're about to sing, and that's 259, We Three Kings of Orient Are. Some comments on the composer. He wrote the words and the music, which is slightly unusual in hymns. It's not unheard of, but it's difficult. He's kind of local. He was born in John Henry Hopkins Jr. lived from 1820 to 1891. He was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, not far from where I was born. He was the son of an Episcopal bishop. He graduated from the University of Vermont with an AB and a master's, and then he went on to the General Theological Seminary. That's an Episcopal seminary in New York City. Unlike a lot of other seminaries, that seminary is still thriving and still there. And as a side note, you probably are quite aware that seminaries are gradually closing down. And the problem I see with that is that there are not ministers available to kind of be leaders for a congregation. And where I work and also here, there's probably no chance that we will ever have a regular minister again, because even with the money, even if you combine a couple of congregations, the ministers are not there. So I was glad to see that at least that seminary is still thriving. He became a deacon, an author, an illustrator, and designer, and he was the seminary's first music teacher and composed several hymns. He wrote the words and music to this most famous hymn, We Three Kings, as part of a Christmas pageant for his nieces and nephews. He served as rector at Trinity Church in Plattsburgh, New York, and later at Christ Episcopal in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And he delivered the eulogy at the funeral service of Ulysses S. Grant. So he knew people who knew people. And I was glad that I went on the website, I found both of those churches. They're both also still thriving and have large active congregations. So good for him. Let's turn to the hymn now, and that's 259, We Three Kings of Orient Are. Megan, I understand this is a story for all ages.
I found a very creative book today. It's called More Than Words. Nathan doesn't say much. When his classmates call out answers or say, hey, or that's mine, or vanilla please, he just listens. He has a lot on his mind though. He is thinking about how many puddles there are outside and how much he loves digging through the schoolyard after it rains. You might think talking is the only way to say something. Well, it is only one way. Tamara loves to talk when she's happy. She says, I'm happy. And when she's sad, she tells us she's sad. But have you noticed someone like Madeline, who shows how she feels when she smiles or cries or laughs? Her face says it all. You can say things in other ways too. Leanne likes to write. So does Carlos. He writes using Braille. Or you could type like McKenna or spell like Raheem. Or use sign language like Fatima and Mateo. You could point and press like Tanvir. I always stop at that name. You could show what you want when you choose, like Jahava. Even when you do use your voice, you can do more than just talk. Kamal likes to sing. Ada, Kayla, and Eli make sounds, while Maya repeats. May can't use words and can't always think of words, but she can move. You can express yourself when you play, like Talia. And build, like Sean, Amani, and Jennifer. You might want to show your spark, style, and pizzazz with what you wear, like Taylor. And your imagination with painting and drawing, like Jordan, Maria, and Nam. Someone might have an idea and dig and dig and dig. And search and gather. They might create something new. If Nathan is quiet, how could you know if he wants to be friends? Do you think you could figure out a way to listen? He actually knows how to say a lot. And I just want to end it by reading something from the jacket that I just thought was really meaningful. By witnessing the beauty of communication diversity, Nathan learns and shows his classmates an essential lesson. Not only does everyone have something to say, but seeking to understand one another is the greatest bridge to friendship and belonging. Thank you.
I always enjoy the stories for everybody. Okay, we'll take some offering now. And as we take the offering, I want to read a little bit about Christmas is in the Heart by Henry van Dyke, who wrote the story I'm going to comment now. To Bethlehem our hearts star-led, from wanderings far and wild, turn to a lowly cattle shed and kneel before the child. We come from deserts pitiless with only human pride, and from the howling wilderness where dread and hate abide. Touched by his hand, we find release from heavy griefs and fears. Our hearts are lifted up with peace and purified by tears. Grant us the grace no more to roam, but following always, and we cannot celebrate Christmas alone. Okay. presentation is now titled, "We Are All Wise People." It didn't start out that way, but that seemed like a better title as I went on with preparing it. Why did I choose this? My mother, incidentally, my program is dedicated to my parents. My mother was a play director long before I was born. I came late in her life, she was 41. And one of the plays that she directed was called The Fourth Wise Man. And she loved it, and she told me that I should read it. Well, I never got to do that for quite a long time, and I found it quite by accident a while ago. I thought, oh, I really should read it. I owe it to my mother to read this play. My mother had quite a sense of humor, and in a different play that she directed once, and that was Arsenic and Old Lace. How many of you know Arsenic and Old Lace? When she came up to the credits part, she had the lights dimmed, and she had the number of gentlemen who were buried in the cellar from drinking the wine. They wore dark clothes, you wouldn't see them, but 12 pairs of sneakers, white sneakers, walked across the stage. So that was my mother's personality. I read it finally, and decided that I really liked it. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and in Pittsburgh there was a rather large Greek Orthodox community, and they celebrated what's called Little Christmas on January 6th, and you walked to church, and that was your Christmas. You didn't celebrate it at other times. And I think that Episcopal churches still celebrate it. The man who wrote this, Henry van Dyke, was an Episcopalian priest, and he was very active in all the churches that he was connected with, and was kind of surprised that Little Christmas didn't get much attention, and so I think that's why he wrote the story. My best friend, Martha Jokiel, who joined the secular humanists in Bethlehem before she had to move away, she's a widow now and is living close to her daughter in Texas, came and gave a presentation here too, and it was about the best ideas from all religions, but not necessarily needing to be tied to a religion. For Little Christmas, a local mayor, that's Eddie Moran of Reading. I'll hold this out so you can see it, but this is the third year that he had a Three Kings celebration in Reading for the children. And so he and a couple other legislators in Reading dressed up as the Three Kings and gave presents to the children. He commented that in Latin-speaking, Latin American cultures, that Little Christmas is important. And so that's when you give gifts. And you don't leave milk and cookies for Santa Claus. You leave grass and water for the camels. So I thought that was an interesting cultural change for us. I talked to my niece, who's an Episcopalian priest near Seattle, Washington, and they had a service. And the church where the writer of the We Three Kings also had a special service to note Three Kings Day and that part of the celebration. Before I tell you the plot of the story, I want to talk about who were the wise men. And it seems that they were from what was the kingdom, or the empire, I should say, of Persia. What is Persia now? I had to look it up. I was embarrassed that I didn't know. What is Persia now? Iran, right. What a change. And in Persia of biblical times, there were what they called philosopher kings. They were both priests and kings of smaller kingdoms within the empire. And they were called magi. Now, if the term alchemy gives us the term of what these days? Alchemy was supposed to be the science of turning base materials into gold. If alchemy has now become what we study in school, in high school, chemistry, right? What do you suppose the word magi turned into? Which is magic, exactly. And they studied everything. And so they were also considered sorcerers, they were considered leaders, but they were the best educated people of their time. And I went back to my old Bible. And remember where they have the maps of territories in the Bible? Mine had the trade routes in dots. And it's quite obvious that the trade routes, not just the Silk Road, that's probably the best known old trade route, and it was not one road, it was many roads, but they all went the same way. There was a lot of communication with Chinese cultures and other cultures, and so these very educated people became the leaders, of both political and religious events in their various kingdoms, which were not big. They were part of an empire. So these philosopher kings and priests could have gotten together if there was a conjunction of two planets at the time of the Star of Bethlehem, and there was also an appearance of Halley's Comet not too far off from that. Those are really not, I looked it all up, they're not really considered to have been the historical, or I should say, the fantasized Star of Bethlehem, but those things did happen around the same time. What do you think was the religion of the Magi? And Magi is a plural word. One of them is Magus, M-A-G-U-S, but these were Magi, plural. And what do you think their religion was? They had one. Starts with a Z, Zoroastrianism, right? I can't say Zarathustraism, it's the same thing, but it's a lot easier to say Zoroastrianism. And looking at a little bit on Zoroastrianism, I find that its theology includes the importance of the following threefold path: good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. It also emphasized thinking for yourself, making your own decisions. So that was quite a departure from gods and goddesses at the time. And it also respected spiritual equality and the duty of all sexes. Zoroastrianism's emphasis on the protection and veneration of nature and its elements has led some to proclaim it as one of the first proponents of ecology. The Avesta, which is the oldest written record of it, and other texts called for the protection of water, earth, fire, and air, thus making it an ecological religion. So that was the background. There are still Zoroastrians. There are not many of them. The worldwide population that claims to be Zoroastrian is only about 200,000 people, which is less than the population of the Lehigh Valley, normally considered to be Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton taken together. So there's another word that I wanted to bring out, and that is the word Mazda, M-A-Z-D-A. What do you suppose it means? It's a big part of Zoroastrianism. Besides a car, but it's connected to the car. It's the old word for wisdom, which appears in Zoroastrian writings and philosophy. And the owner of the company that makes Mazdas chose that word because he venerated it and he venerated Zoroastrianism. Part of the Iraq-Iran War, which was considered by some people to be a civil war, also concerned Islam versus Zoroastrianism, because there were still a number of adherents there. The closest relative to Zoroastrianism around here is the Baha'i faith. And I've been here a long time. I've been associated with fellowship for over 30 years. I remember we had a speaker from the Baha'i faith. There was a local person, and I was wondering if some of you would like that person to speak again sometime. Okay, then I'll make some inquiries about doing that. Okay. The story itself was originally called The Story of the Other Wise Man. And it's a little novel, sometimes called novella. And it was made into a play. The little story is written in narrative form. And the play that came from it and subsequent movie, which is called The Fourth Wise Man, added a character to it so that it could be done in dialogue. There is the Magus, whose name was Artaban, and this is a 1985 movie, which you can find on YouTube. It takes some patience to get through it because it's filled with advertisements for everything from healthcare to very very religious people who are out to get you to join the church. Artaban is played by Martin Sheen, and that's the wise man. Orontes, his slave, is played by Alan Arkin. Judith, the leader of a small town that needs help, is played by Eileen Brennan. Ralph Bellamy and Charlie Sheen and Adam Arkin, son of Alan Arkin, had small parts, and of course Charlie's the son of Martin Sheen. The script for the movie was written by Tom Fontana, an award-winning writer. And the plot of the story is that the fourth wise man starts out from his home. He's planning to meet his other wise man friends, the ones that we sang about this morning. But he's late. He doesn't meet them. Why is he late? Because he started to take on his way, and somebody became sick and needed help along the road. Now, his special training as one of the Magi was in celestial observation and in helping sick people. He was a healer. So he stopped to heal the man. In the process, found out that he was heading the wrong direction. He thought that the star would be taking him to Jerusalem. It wasn't. It was leading him to Bethlehem. So he's taken 3 treasures with him that he plans to give to the king, to the baby king, when he finds him. And the one is a pearl, the one is a sapphire, and one is a ruby. Well, when he realizes that he's really supposed to be heading to Bethlehem, he sells the sapphire because he's on a horse. I'm sure it was an Arabian stallion, had to be. But he realized that he couldn't do the journey into Bethlehem with a horse. And so he sold it to get camels and supplies to go to Bethlehem. So along the way, when he gets to Bethlehem, he finds that Herod is now in the process of trying to kill all the babies up to 2 years of age. And so he finds himself in sort of a secret, hidden place in Bethlehem with a woman who's trying to protect the baby. And he says, "What's happening here? I'm looking for so-and-so." And she says, "Well, that couple had to escape to Egypt, but we're all trying to protect our babies." And at that time in the story, a guard comes to the door, with his sword out, and he's looking for a child who's crying. And Artaban stands in the doorway and says, "Well, there's nothing here. Here, take this." And he gives him the ruby. Is that one? I forgot. Okay, telling us that bad weather's on the way. So Artaban, who's made out to be a big, strong guy, like how many phones were there that went off like mine? Okay, don't be embarrassed. So just be careful driving home. So he stands in the doorway and shows the guard this ruby and says, and he's dressed up, he's got his like kingly outfit on, and he says to the guard, "I didn't hear anything, did you?" And so the guard takes the ruby and goes away. It reminded me of the place in Sound of Music when the family is escaping Austria, and the boyfriend of the oldest daughter says to the Nazis, he said, "I didn't see anything in the graveyard. I saw that graveyard on the tour, and you couldn't hide there if your life depended on it." And so the young man took that chance and told that lie so that the whole family could escape. Same idea. So Artaban goes on with now his camels and everything, goes to Egypt. Well, the trip was long, and he finds himself helping somebody else, and he's in a community that altogether needs help. And so he stays, and he also knows farming, and he knows how to teach them to do a lot of things. He stays and does it. He gets old there. And I have to comment on the part of the slave. He's traveling with Orontes, his slave, who started out his slave. The father had said, "I don't think you're doing the right thing, but go with my blessing," and take your slave with you. And when you both come back, the slave will have his freedom. So the slave, he's all in for that. The part that Alan Arkin plays is the part of being like the sensible advisor. How many people saw the Russians are coming? The Russians are coming. So he's like the second in command, and he's trying to help his captain who was grounded the ship on the sandbar, and which made me think of Bar Harbor. You can imagine how easy it would be to be grounded. So the Orontes part by Alan Arkin, he's always trying to preach a little bit of wisdom and practicality to Artaban. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but they both grow old together. But anyhow, Artaban stays and he helps this community out of their difficulties. Time has gone on, and at some point he realizes that he should be heading to Jerusalem. 30-some years have passed. And so Artaban and Orontes, and Artaban has given Orontes his freedom. He says, you've helped me so much, you've stayed with me so long, just go and live your own life. Orontes, however, tries that for a day or two and comes back and he says, I just want to be your friend. So they go on together to Jerusalem, and they don't catch up with Jesus of Nazareth until it's the time of the crucifixion. I want to read you a little bit from my old Bible, and I know it's the one I have from high school, or even sooner. It's a quotation from Matthew, chapter 25, verses 35 to 40. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. The disciples said, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed thee, or thirsty and give you thee a drink? And when did we see thee a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visited thee? And Jesus answered, truly, I say to you, as you did to one of the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. That's the scripture that Henry van Dyke wrote his story around. And I see that as social consciousness coming up from all kinds of religions and helping us out. Okay, those are the end of my comments. Do you have anything you want to add to it, subtract from it, or? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I listen to whatever I think is interesting to me, and one of the things I will listen to is the Catholic channel on Sirius XM. Mostly humorous stuff, but one of the comments someone made is that if you look at the scripture that you're reading, there's very little said about the wise men. If you look at it, all that's mentions of them is that they came. The details you're giving were after the fact, and so as the person was joking, it's like they kind of become the big people in this whole story. If you go back to the Old Testament, New Testament, there's darn little that's said about them, and so we've made up the stories about them that you're sort of telling today. They weren't in the original scripture. They've just been expanded upon dramatically over the course of time, and a lot of guessing was done about who they were, where they came from, what the best assumption was. So we should understand, go back to the source, they were very minor characters in the birth of Jesus story.
Absolutely, and the wise men, and they're never called magi in the Bible. The wise men part of the Christmas story is only found in Matthew, and that's quite an exception because Matthew, Mark, and Luke they're called the synoptic gospels, which I recently discovered means with one eye. They are so similar that a lot of scholars feel that they got from the same sources or perhaps from each other. But there's only that one mention, and then it's done. You're right. And so looking at the story of the other wise men, it's all possible. It's nothing out of the realm of possibility. It's not likely, but it is all something that's humanly possible. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right. Oh, another thing that made me feel the story was important is that the writer, Henry van Dyke, as an Episcopal minister, he was Presbyterian, sorry, His father was also a Presbyterian minister, and his father did not agree with emancipation. And his father, even though they lived in the North, didn't feel that that slaves should be freed. And obviously, the son, our writer here, did. And it was written at the same time, here in the United States, it was written at the same time that O Holy Night was written. And the words were written by a French lawyer. It's called Cantique de Noël in French. But the very important third verse says, slaves are our brother. And so it was becoming an issue in both England and France and the United States as to what to do with slavery. Also, in the story, the father, who doesn't agree with the son's decision to go on this trip, says, "Go with my blessing, and I hope to see you return." And so I think those are very important things that Van Dyke offered in his story that were not necessarily true in his own life, and he wished that they could be. So I think that was his quiet way of like saying to his dad, "Yeah, but I'll do this my way." All right. Any other comments? Okay. I chose "Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee" as our closing hymn, not because it's related to the topic, but because Henry van Dyke wrote the words for it. And he once said to one of the presidents, Van Dyke was also the ambassador to Belgium during World War I, and found out that he had more than he could handle with Americans trying to get back during the war. He handled it well, but that wasn't exactly what he signed up for when he agreed to be an ambassador. But he went to the president with the tune already chosen and the words already written and said, "Here's a hymn that you have to use." So please find the hymn in your hymnal, stand up to sing it. Chloe, could you come in? Okay, somebody extinguish. Thank you. As we extinguish our chalice, let's read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands, until we are together again. Okay, for my closing words, I'm going to read the words of the hymn, "We'll Build a Land," and that's in honor of Martin Luther King Day and Day of Service tomorrow. And it's because the quotation is from Isaiah and Amos in the Bible, and Amos was Martin Luther King's favorite book of the Bible. We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves on mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. We'll build a land building upon ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins and of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from the spirits, once faint and once weak. Where like oaks of righteousness stand out her people. Oh, come, build a land, my people, we seek. And the chorus refrain is, come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever rolling stream. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into joys and concerns now, and I invite. Thank you. Hey, see you for coffee.